It was not a sound, but a silence that marked the end of everything. For Diana, Princess of Themyscira, the death of her universe was a perfect, horrifying void. One moment, she was fighting alongside heroes of immense power against a wave of antimatter that consumed realities. The next, she was adrift in a sea of nothingness, the psychic screams of her friends, her mother, her sisters, all extinguished into a final, deafening quiet. She was the sole survivor, a fragment of a dead reality clinging to the hull of her invisible jet as it was tossed through the bleed, the raw, chaotic space between worlds. Her lasso of truth, a gift from the goddess Hestia, glowed with a soft, comforting warmth, the last ember of a hearth that was now cold. Her heart, the heart of a warrior, was broken. But it was the faint, impossibly distant tug of something familiar that kept her from succumbing to despair. It was a song of divinity, an echo of the pantheon she served, faint and distorted, but there. Clinging to that thread of hope, she steered her battered consciousness toward the resonance, praying it was not a phantom. The storm that hit Long Island Sound that evening was unlike anything Percy Jackson had ever seen. As the son of Poseidon, he knew the moods of the sea better than anyone, but this was different. The sky didn't just churn with black clouds, it seemed to rip open. Cracks of silent, violet lightning spiderwebbed across the heavens, and the rain fell not with the familiar sting of salt water, but with a strange, ozone-scented weight that felt alien. He and Annabeth Chase were on patrol along the beach that marked the magical border of Camp Half-Blood, their swords drawn more out of habit than any real sense of threat. No monster would be stupid enough to brave a storm this violent, not even with the camp's magical protections weakened by the recent war against Kronos. "This isn't natural," Annabeth yelled over the howling wind, her gray eyes as sharp and analytical as her mother Athena's scanning the horizon. "This feels wrong, like the sky itself is tearing." Percy grunted in agreement, planting his feet in the shifting sand as a wave crashed near his feet, though the water respectfully avoided soaking his sneakers. "Dad's not angry. This is something else." His hand tightened on the hilt of his celestial bronze sword, Riptide. He felt the familiar thrum of its power, but there was another energy in the air now, a powerful, noble, and deeply sorrowful presence that made the hairs on his arms stand up. It felt ancient, divine even, but not of their world. It was the energy of a god, yet it held no arrogance, no selfish demand for worship. It was pure, concentrated grief and purpose. That's when they saw it. A streak of light, barely visible through the torrential downpour, arced across the sky and slammed into the beach just beyond the camp's magical barrier. The impact was strangely muted, more of a concussive boom that seemed to ripple through reality than a loud explosion. The storm, as if its purpose was fulfilled, began to recede almost immediately, the unnatural lightning vanishing and the torrential rain softening to a drizzle. Percy and Annabeth exchanged a look, a silent conversation honed by years of life-or-death battles. "Friend or foe?" Annabeth's eyes asked. "Let's find out," Percy's expression answered. They sprinted down the beach, their feet kicking up wet sand, and found the source of the impact. It wasn't a crater, but a woman, lying unconscious at the center of a patch of sand that had been fused into glass. She was clad in armor that seemed forged from myth itself, a golden eagle emblazoned on a crimson cuirass, a star-spangled blue skirt, and silver bracelets on each wrist. A golden tiara was slightly askew on her forehead, and at her hip lay a coiled, glowing lasso. Her neck was fanned out around her head like a halo against the pale sand, and even in unconsciousness, her face held a regal beauty that was both fierce and heartbreakingly sad. She was without a doubt the most powerful-looking person Percy had ever seen who wasn't a god, and yet she was clearly wounded, not physically but on a deeper spiritual level. An aura of profound loss radiated from her, a sorrow so deep it felt like a physical weight in the air. Annabeth knelt cautiously, her dagger in hand, her mind racing through every monster, nymph, and minor goddess she had ever studied. "She's not in any of the archives," she whispered, her voice a mix of awe and suspicion. "Her armor, it's like a mix of Roman and Greek design, but the craftsmanship is beyond anything Hephaestus would make. It feels older." Percy nudged the woman's shoulder with the flat of his blade. "Hey, you alive?" The woman stirred, her eyelids fluttering. A low groan escaped her lips, a sound of pure agony. Her hand instinctively went to the glowing rope at her side, her fingers wrapping around it. Her eyes opened, and for a second Percy felt like he was looking into the heart of a nebula, deep, dark, and full of ancient light and dying stars. They were eyes that had witnessed the end of a universe. "Mother," she whispered, her voice raspy but imbued with an authority that made both demigods straighten up. "Hippolyta, Themyscira." She pushed herself up onto one elbow, her gaze sweeping over the unfamiliar shoreline, the woods of Camp Half-Blood, and the two strangely dressed teenagers before her. She could feel it now, the divine energy she had followed. It was here, all around her. The scent of the sea held the echo of a sea god, the wisdom in the girl's eyes spoke of a goddess of battle strategy, and the very air vibrated with the power of Olympus. But it was all wrong. It was like hearing a beloved song played in a different key, with half the notes missing. "Where is this place?" she asked, her voice gaining strength. "Who are you?" "You first," Percy said, though he lowered Riptide slightly. This woman didn't feel like an enemy. She felt like a tragedy. The woman pushed herself to her feet, standing with a grace that defied her apparent exhaustion. She was tall, taller than Percy, and radiated an aura of command that not even the gods on Olympus could fully muster. "I am Diana, daughter of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons," she declared, her voice ringing with a truth that was absolute. "I am the princess of Themyscira, and I am looking for my home. If you want to see more characters enter different universes, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character and the universe you'd want to see them in down in the comments below. With great power comes great responsibility." Annabeth's mind, a library of ancient lore and divine genealogies, slammed shut. The names Diana spoke were not just familiar, they were foundational. Hippolyta was the Amazon queen defeated by Heracles, her girdle the object of his 9th labor. Themyscira was the mythical island home of the Amazons, a place whispered about but never found in their age. And Diana was the Roman name for Artemis, the virgin goddess of the hunt. This woman claimed titles that were both legendary and contradictory, weaving them together with an air of absolute sincerity that was more jarring than any monstrous roar. "That's impossible," Annabeth stated, her voice flat with certainty. "Themyscira was lost centuries ago. Queen Hippolyta died at the hands of Heracles. The Amazons who remain are scattered, and they are led by Queen Hilla, daughter of Bellona." Diana's expression hardened, a flicker of confusion clouding her grief-stricken eyes. "Bellona? The Roman goddess? Heracles did not kill my mother. He deceived her, but she lived. And Themyscira was never lost. It was protected, hidden from the world of men by the power of our gods." She looked from Annabeth's fiercely intelligent face to Percy's more straightforwardly bewildered one. "Your history is wrong." "No," chimed in Percy, stepping forward. "Our history is our history. We kind of live it every day. I've met Heracles. He's a jerk, but he's a god now. The stories are true." The standoff was immediate and absolute. It wasn't a conflict of wills, but of realities. Each side was speaking an undeniable truth that completely invalidated the others. The tension was broken by the sound of approaching hooves, clopping softly on the damp sand. Chiron, the ancient centaur and trainer of heroes, emerged from the shadows of the dunes. His face, usually a mask of weary wisdom, was etched with deep concern. He had felt the cosmic tremor of Diana's arrival, a disturbance in the fabric of the mist that separated the mortal and mythical worlds. "My dear," he said, his tone gentle, "you radiate a power I have not felt in many ages. It is the aura of the Pantheon, yet it is different, sharper, clearer." Diana's gaze softened slightly at the sight of the centaur. She had known centaurs on her world, noble and wise creatures. "You are a son of Kronos," she stated, not as a question, but as a fact. "A teacher. I can see it in your eyes." Chiron nodded slowly. "I am Chiron. This is Camp Half-Blood, a refuge for demigods." "Demigods," Diana repeated, the word tasting strange. "Children of the gods and mortals? In my world, such children were heroes of a bygone age, not a summer camp." The impasse was clear. They were speaking the same language, using the same names, but referring to entirely different worlds. Seeing the suspicion that still lingered in the demigod's eyes, and the cautious confusion in Chiron's face, Diana knew words were not enough. Her world was gone. All she had left was her truth. Uncoiling the golden lasso from her hip, she held it out. The rope shimmered with an inner light, radiating a warmth that felt like sitting by a hearth on a cold night, a feeling of absolute safety and honesty. "This is the lasso of Hestia," she explained. "It is a sacred weapon of the Amazons, and it compels any who are bound by it to speak only the truth. I will not use it on you, but I ask you to hold it and ask me your questions. You will feel the truth of my answers, even if you cannot understand them." Annabeth, ever the bravest when it came to seeking knowledge, stepped forward before Chiron or Percy could object. Her hand, trembling slightly, reached out and grasped the glowing rope. A soft golden light traveled up her arm, and her sharp gray eyes widened in astonishment. It wasn't a jolt of power, but a wave of overwhelming empathy. For a split second, she felt the crushing weight of Diana's loss, the echo of a dying universe, the love for a mother she would never see again. It was a truth more profound than any fact. "Who are you?" Annabeth asked, her voice now a whisper. "I am Diana, daughter of Queen Hippolyta and Zeus, king of the gods," Diana replied, her voice steady. "I was sculpted from clay and given life by the last breath of the goddess Aphrodite. I am the champion of the Amazons, a founder of the Justice League, and the last survivor of my universe." The words themselves were insane, but the lasso sang with their honesty. Annabeth felt no deception, no trickery, no madness. She felt the unshakable conviction of a lived experience. She stumbled back, releasing the rope, her mind reeling. She believes it," she stammered, looking at Chiron. "Every word, it's true, to her it's true." Percy, seeing Annabeth's reaction, needed no further convincing. He trusted her judgment implicitly. "Another universe?" he said, the concept sounding like something out of a comic book. "Like a whole other set of gods and everything?" "They have the same names," Diana clarified, her voice heavy, "but they are not the same. My Zeus was a flawed but noble king who sacrificed himself to protect humanity. My Ares was a complex, often cruel, but ultimately honorable warrior. They were my family." Chiron stroked his beard thoughtfully, the pieces of a terrifying puzzle clicking into place. The storm, the foreign divine energy, the woman whose entire existence was a paradox. "This is a matter of the highest concern," he said gravely. "We must take you to the big house. Your presence here could be seen as an invasion by our own gods, and our Zeus is not known for his patience or his understanding." He looked at the powerful, grieving woman before them. She was a weapon forged by a different set of gods, a warrior with no war to fight, and a princess with no kingdom to rule. She was a refugee, but a refugee with the power to level mountains, and she was now their responsibility. The demigod's dilemma no longer was just about what to do with her, but about how to protect her and themselves from the storm her arrival would inevitably unleash. The big house was a chaotic jumble of history, a place where a mounted leopard head shared wall space with tactical maps of monster-infested territories. Diana sat at a worn ping-pong table that served as a council table, a cup of nectar untouched before her. The magical drink, meant to heal and soothe demigods, did little for a wound carved by the death of a universe. Chiron, Percy, and Annabeth sat opposite her, the atmosphere thick with the impossible truth of her existence. It was Chiron who finally gave voice to the thread she had clung to across the void. "There is a Themyscira in this world," the centaur confirmed, his voice low and deliberate. Or, more accurately, there was. After the original fell, the Amazons eventually found a new home, a hidden island blessed by the gods to be a sanctuary. But they are not the Amazons of your memory, Diana. They are a fractured people. Some follow Otrera's more militant path, while others have established a presence in the mortal world, like the company run by Queen Hilla. The name, Themyscira, was a balm and a barb. It was the promise of home, a place of sisters and sanctuary, the scent of the sea mixed with the clang of the forge. The hope that surged through her was a physical force, so powerful it almost brought her to her knees. For the first time since the silence fell, a genuine light flickered in her eyes. "You have seen it. You know where it is?" Annabeth, ever the pragmatist, shook her head. "No one knows where it is. It's magically concealed, protected. Finding it would require a quest of immense difficulty, likely navigating the sea of monsters." Her tone wasn't meant to be cruel, but it was a necessary dose of reality. And Chiron is right. These Amazons, they follow a Roman legacy through their queen. They are warriors, yes, but they're also hardened by centuries of loss and betrayal. They might not welcome a stranger claiming to be a princess from a world that doesn't exist. The flicker of hope in Diana's eyes did not die. It sharpened into a point of sheer, unyielding will. "I do not care if they welcome me," she stated, her voice resonating with a quiet power that made the very air in the room feel still. "They are Amazons. They are my sisters. In my world or this one, that bond is sacred. My mother, my world, it is all gone. That island is the last echo of my life. It is the only place in this entire reality that might feel like home. I must go." Percy shifted uncomfortably. He understood desperation. He had journeyed to the underworld and back for his mother. He had sailed the sea of monsters to save this very camp. He looked at Diana, truly looked at her, past the strange armor and the divine power. He saw someone who had lost everything, and now was clinging to the last piece of wreckage in a storm. "It's too dangerous," said Chiron, his expression pained. "Your arrival is already a cosmic disturbance. To transport you to another secret sovereign location, if Olympus were to discover it, they would see it as an act of aggression. Zeus might believe we are trying to install a rival power on his throne. The Amazons, if they perceive you as a threat, could declare war on the camp for bringing you to their shores. The risks are too great." "And what is the alternative?" Diana countered, her gaze locking onto the wise old centaur's eyes. "For me to remain here? Your camp is a beacon for demigods. My divine energy is foreign, unique. How long until one of your gods takes notice? A god of war, perhaps, drawn to a new warrior? Or a jealous queen, seeing a daughter of a Zeus not her own? Leaving me here is not hiding me. It is planting a bomb in the heart of your home and waiting for it to explode." Her logic was flawless, and Annabeth's sharp mind couldn't refute it. Diana was right. Her presence made Camp Half-Blood a target. Hiding her was a temporary and likely futile solution. Diana stood, her regal bearing filling the room. She was not making a request, she was making her stand. "I will not bring your home to ruin. If you will not guide me, I will leave on my own. I will find this sea you speak of, and I will cross it. I will face these monsters, and I will find my sisters. I have faced down gods and monsters you cannot imagine. I will not be stopped by fear of what might happen." Her declaration hung in the air, a testament to a will forged in a reality of heroes who stood against impossible odds. It was a language Percy understood perfectly. He looked at Annabeth, whose calculating eyes were already weighing the new set of variables. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was a risk either way, but letting this powerful, determined woman wander blindly through their monster-infested world was the greater one. "I'll help you," Percy said, the words tumbling out before he could second-guess them. If there's a chance it's your home, you deserve to see it. We know the Sea of Monsters. We can get you there." Annabeth sighed, a sound of fond exasperation. "I suppose someone has to make sure you don't get eaten by a Scylla on the way, seaweed brain. I'm in." Chiron looked at his two most accomplished students and then at the Amazon princess whose grief had been reforged into purpose. He knew he could not stop them, and perhaps he shouldn't. Diana's argument was sound. This was not a problem that could be hidden from. It had to be confronted. "Very well," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision. "But you will not go alone, and you will go with this understanding. You are seeking answers, not a kingdom. You go as a supplicant, not as a conqueror. The peace we have is fragile, Diana. Do not be the one to break it." Diana nodded, a profound, solemn gratitude in her eyes that was more powerful than any words. "I am a champion of peace, Chiron. I will not start a war. I only want to find what is left of my home." The quest was set. A desperate hope had a destination. Now all that lay between Diana and the echo of her past was a sea of legends and monsters. On the 600th floor of the Empire State Building, where the veil between the mortal and divine worlds was thinnest, Mount Olympus burned with a light all its own. It was a city of impossible architecture, of golden temples and floating gardens, all humming with the raw, untamed power of the gods. But today, the hum was discordant. A new note had been introduced into the ancient symphony of divine energy, and it was setting every god's teeth on edge. It was a power that felt undeniably divine, resonating with the same primordial energy that birthed them all. Yet it was structured differently. It was pure, focused, and tinged with a sorrow so profound it felt like a cosmic wound. It was the energy of a champion, but not one of their own. In the grand throne room, Zeus, king of the gods and lord of the sky, sat upon his simple, elegant throne of polished platinum. A thundercloud brooded over his head, and the air crackled with his agitation. He had felt the anomaly's arrival as a tear in his sky, a trespass against his domain. "It is a challenge," he boomed, his voice the roll of distant thunder. His master bolt, resting beside his throne, seemed to pulse with sympathetic energy. "A foreign power, reeking of a pantheon not our own, appears on the shores of the demigod camp. It claims the name of my Roman counterpart, and the lineage of a Zeus who is not me. This is an invasion." On her own throne, a magnificent silver construction that seemed to glow with moonlight, her sister Artemis was silent, her youthful face a mask of contemplation. The stranger claimed her Roman name, yet she felt no connection to her, no sense of self. It was deeply unsettling. Poseidon, seated on his throne of deep-sea coral and pearls, shifted uncomfortably. "My son is with this stranger," he rumbled, his voice the sound of the deep ocean. "Percy would not aid an enemy of Olympus. He is reckless, but his heart is true. Perhaps we should seek to understand before we seek to destroy." "Understand?" Hera scoffed from her ivory throne. "It is a child of another Zeus, a bastard from a reality not our own. Its very existence is an insult to the sanctity of our family, our reign." It was Athena, her gray eyes burning with an intense, analytical light, who brought a sliver of reason to the paranoid court. "Father, her power, though foreign, does not feel malicious. It is disciplined, controlled. It is the energy of a warrior, but one who serves an ideal. To strike blindly would be tactically unwise. We need information. We need to know her capabilities, her allegiances, her purpose here." Zeus considered his daughter's words. Athena's counsel was rarely wrong, but his pride and paranoia were powerful forces. An assessment was necessary, but it would be an assessment on his terms. It would be a test not of diplomacy, but of strength. A message. "A test, then," Zeus declared, his gaze sweeping across the assembled gods. "We will gauge the limits of this intruder's power. We will see if she bends. We will see if she breaks. Who among you is suited to deliver such a test?" Before any other could volunteer, a guttural laugh echoed through the throne room. From a chrome and leather throne flickering with images of war and violence, a figure arose. He was clad in black leather and military fatigues, his face handsome in a brutish, cruel way. Dark sunglasses hid eyes that burned with the red light of pure, unadulterated conflict. This was Ares, the god of war, and he smelled a fight. "Sounds like my kind of party," Ares growled, cracking his knuckles. The sound was like bones snapping. "A new warrior shows up on the block? Gotta see what she's made of. Let me go say hello. I'll find out everything you need to know." Athena narrowed her eyes. "Ares, your tests tend to level city blocks. We need intelligence, not a brawl." "Same difference," Ares sneered, a cruel grin spreading across his face. "You'll learn everything you need to know about someone when you're trying to rip their spine out. Is she tough? Is she loyal to us? Will she bow to a real god of war? I'll get your answers." Zeus nodded, a grim satisfaction on his face. This was the perfect solution. Ares was a blunt instrument, but an effective one. He would not be swayed by trickery or pleas for sympathy. He would meet power with power, and in doing so, reveal the stranger's true nature. If she was weak, she would be broken. If she was strong, she would be forced to show her hand. "Go then, Ares," the king of the gods commanded. "Confront this Diana. Test her strength, her will, her loyalty. See what metal she is forged from. But do not kill her, unless she proves a true threat to the sovereignty of Olympus." The unspoken addendum hung in the air, and you get to define what a threat is. Ares' grin widened into a predatory snarl. "Don't worry, Daddy. I'll play nice." He vanished in a flash of blood-red light, the faint scent of gunpowder and gore lingering in his wake. Down in the mortal world, on the edge of Long Island Sound, Diana stood with Percy and Annabeth by a small sailing vessel. They were preparing for their journey. The plan was to sail into the Sea of Monsters under the cover of darkness. For a moment, Diana looked up, her gaze distant. A strange, familiar feeling prickled at her senses, the metallic tang of bloodlust on the wind, the low thrum of impending violence. It was the scent of war, an energy she knew as intimately as her own heartbeat. But like everything else in this world, it was wrong. It was a brutish, chaotic, and hollow version of the presence she once knew. It was not the scent of her brother, the honorable, tormented warrior. This was the stench of a butcher. "Someone is coming," she said, her voice low and steady, as she instinctively placed her hand on the hilt of the sword tucked at her back. "Someone who enjoys conflict." The air grew thick and heavy, charged with the static of pure animosity. The scent of ozone from Diana's arrival was replaced by the coppery tang of old blood and the acrid smell of spent gunpowder. A low, guttural rumble grew in the distance, not the sound of thunder, but of a finely tuned, brutally powerful engine. It grew louder, closer, until a massive Harley-Davidson motorcycle, its chrome frame seeming to drink the last light of dusk, roared over the nearest dune and skidded to a halt on the sand, its tires somehow finding purchase. The rider swung his leg off the bike, his heavy leather boots crunching on the sand. He was tall, built like a linebacker, and clad in a black leather jacket over a faded t-shirt depicting a mushroom cloud. A cruel, arrogant smirk played on his lips, and his eyes were hidden behind a pair of dark sunglasses, though Diana didn't need to see them to feel the malevolent, fiery energy radiating from behind them. This was the source of the presence she'd felt. This was the butcher. Percy instinctively drew Riptide, its bronze glow a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness around the newcomer. Ares, he growled, the name a curse on his lips. What do you want? Ares ignored him, his predatory gaze fixed solely on Diana. He slowly took off his sunglasses, revealing eyes that were not eyes at all, but empty sockets filled with roaring flames. "Well, well, well," he drawled, his voice a gravelly rumble. "Look what we have here. Heard there was a new girl in town, one who dresses for war but smells like peace." He spat on the sand, as if the word itself was offensive. "Lord Zeus sent me to give you a little welcome to the neighborhood quiz. First question, who the hell do you think you are showing up in his sky?" Diana stood her ground, her posture calm and her expression unreadable. She recognized the archetype, the divine embodiment of conflict, but this version was a pale, thuggish imitation of the brother she knew. Her Ares had been a god of strategy, of the warrior's code, of the terrible and necessary balance of conflict. This god was a street brawler with an atom bomb for a heart. "I am Diana of Themyscira," she answered, her voice even and clear, carrying over the sound of the waves. "My arrival here was an accident. I seek no conflict with the gods of this world." Ares laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "No conflict, honey. You are a conflict. Your very existence is a problem. And problems," he said, cracking his knuckles, "are what I solve." In a blink, his form shimmered, the leather jacket and jeans replaced by gleaming blood-red Grecian battle armor. A massive, wickedly sharp two-handed sword appeared in his grip. "So, let's see what you're made of. Show me the power of this other Zeus." He charged, not with a warrior's grace, but with the explosive, straightforward momentum of a freight train. The sand flew from under his feet as he closed the distance in a heartbeat, his sword swinging in an arc meant to cleave Diana in two. Annabeth cried out a warning, but Diana was already in motion. She did not retreat. She moved forward, flowing into the attack. With a movement too fast for Percy's eye to fully track, she drew her own sword, a divinely forged blade, sharp enough to slice the electrons from an atom, and met his charge. The clang of their meeting was not metal on metal, but a deafening peal of thunder that shook the very ground. A shockwave erupted from the point of impact, blasting Percy and Annabeth off their feet. "You're fast," Ares grunted, genuine surprise in his fiery eyes, "but you're holding back." He pressed his attack, his blows coming like a relentless storm, each one powerful enough to shatter a mountain. He fought with pure, unrestrained fury, a whirlwind of destruction. Diana was his opposite. Her movements were a dance of deadly precision. She was a master of 1,000 fighting styles, and it showed. She parried, dodged, and deflected, using his momentum against him. She fought defensively, her feet never seeming to leave a single spot as she pivoted and flowed around his brutal assault. Her goal was not to harm, but to assess, to understand. "Why do you not strike?" she asked, her voice steady even as she blocked a blow that cracked the very air. "Talking in a fight?" Ares roared, pushing her back. "What's the matter? Don't have the stomach for a real war?" "This is not war," Diana stated, her silver bracelets flaring with light as she caught his sword between them. "This is a temper tantrum. War should have a purpose, a reason. It is a terrible last resort to protect the innocent. You fight for nothing but the thrill of it." Her words hit him harder than any physical blow. His face contorted in a mask of pure rage. "The thrill is the point," he bellowed, kicking her back. "It's the only thing that's real. The clash of steel, the screams of the dying. That's what we live for." Diana's expression finally shifted from stoic calm to a profound, pitying sadness. "Then you are not a god of war," she said, her voice ringing with an absolute authority that silenced the crashing waves. This was the final insult. With a scream of incandescent fury, Ares channeled his divine essence into his blade, causing it to erupt in hellish flames. He lunged, aiming not to test her, but to end her. Diana knew the assessment was over. It was time to give him his answer. As his flaming sword descended, she slammed her bracelets together. A wave of pure golden energy, the Aegis effect, erupted from her. It was not an attack, but a perfect, unstoppable defense. The shockwave of divine force struck Ares head-on. It extinguished his flaming sword and sent him staggering backward, his divine armor cracking under the strain. For the first time, the look on his face was not arrogance, but shock. Before he could recover, she moved. She was a blur of motion, disarming him with a fluid twist of her sword that sent his sword spinning into the sand. She closed the distance, not with a weapon, but with her hands. She struck him not with a fist, but a series of precise nerve strikes at his joints, shoulder, elbow, wrist, forcing him to one knee, his arm hanging uselessly at his side. She now stood over him, the tip of her sword resting gently on the gorget of his armor, right above his heart. The fight had lasted less than a minute. Ares stared up at her, the flames in his eyes sputtering with disbelief and humiliation. He was beaten, disarmed, and humbled by a woman who hadn't even seemed to be trying to hurt him. "My purpose is peace," Diana said, her voice low but echoing with immense power. "But I am a warrior born. Make no mistake, if you threaten those under my protection, you will learn the difference between a brawl and a war." She withdrew her sword and turned her back on him, a gesture of ultimate dismissal. With a final, hate-filled glare, Ares vanished, teleporting back to Olympus not in a flash of glory, but in a sulking, smoky dissipation. Percy and Annabeth scrambled to their feet, their minds reeling. They had just seen someone treat the god of war like an unruly child and win. "Holy sticks," Percy breathed, staring at Diana with newfound awe. You just spanked Ares." Diana looked back at them, the warrior's fire in her eyes softening back into its deep, abiding sadness. "His power is great," she admitted, "but he has no discipline. He fights without a cause. That is not strength. It is a weakness." She had proven her mettle, but in doing so, she had declared herself to the heavens. Her quest for a lost home had just become infinitely more dangerous.
The aftermath of the fight with Ares left an invisible crater on the beach, a zone of palpable awe and fear. Percy and Annabeth looked at Diana not as a refugee, but as something else entirely, a force of nature guided by an iron will. Chiron, who had witnessed the confrontation from the dunes, trotted forward, his face a mixture of deep concern and profound respect. "You have done what few heroes have ever managed, child," he said, his voice grave. "You have humbled the god of war, but in doing so, you have painted a target on your back visible from Olympus. You must leave now." There were no further arguments. They loaded supplies onto a small, sturdy sailboat named the Nereid's Compass, celestial bronze fittings, a single mast, and enough room for 3 warriors and their gear. Annabeth, a master navigator and strategist, plotted a course using a combination of ancient star charts and her own brilliant intuition. Percy, as the son of the sea god, would handle the vessel, coaxing the winds and currents to their will. Diana, their protector, stood at the prow, her gaze fixed on the horizon, a silent, regal figurehead cutting through the waves. For the first few days, the journey was tense. They were three strangers bound by an impossible circumstance, but the endless expanse of the sea has a way of wearing down their ears. During the long night watches, under a blanket of stars that were both familiar and alien to Diana, they began to talk. "So, the Justice League," Percy said one night, breaking a comfortable silence. "Were they all like you? Super powerful, I mean?" A sad smile touched Diana's lips. "Some were. One was a man from a doomed world, powered by your yellow sun. Another was the king of the oceans, a bridge between two peoples. But some of the bravest had no powers at all. A knight who used fear as a weapon, fueled by the loss of his parents. An archer who never missed. They were heroes not because of their power, but because of their choices." Annabeth, who had been sharpening her dagger, looked up, her interest piqued. "Our gods, they rarely make the heroic choice. They're driven by pride, jealousy, lust. We have to be the heroes in spite of them, not because of them." "Your world has placed a heavy burden on its children," Diana observed, her gaze softening as she looked at the two teenagers. They were so young, yet their eyes held the weariness of veterans. "On my world, we were partners with the gods. We fought alongside them. We did not have to clean up after their squabbles." A bond began to form in those shared stories, an alliance forged not just in a common goal, but in a shared experience of being an outsider. Percy was a son of the Big Three, his very existence a violation of a divine oath. Annabeth's intellect often set her apart, her mind always 5 steps ahead of everyone else. And Diana was the ultimate outsider, a ghost from a dead reality. They were a trio of anomalies sailing a sea of monsters, and in that shared otherness, they found a strange sort of family. Their first true test came on the 5th day. A sweet, melodic sound drifted across the water, a song of such impossible beauty that it seemed to weave itself directly into the soul. Annabeth's eyes widened in alarm. "The sirens," she breathed, her hand immediately going for the pouch of beeswax she had packed. "We have to plug our ears, now." Percy, already looking hazy, fumbled for the wax, but Diana held up a hand. "No," she said, her voice firm, though a profound sadness was already filling her eyes. "My lasso is a weapon of truth. I cannot be a hypocrite who hides from it, even a beautiful lie." "Diana, you don't understand," Annabeth insisted. "Their song doesn't just sound nice, it shows you what you desire most. It will drive you mad." But it was too late. The song was already in Diana's heart. It was not just a melody, it was the voice of her mother, Hippolyta, calling her to the training arena. It was the clang of the forges on Themyscira, the laughter of her Amazon sisters. It was the calm, reassuring voice of a Kryptonian friend, telling her everything would be all right. The song did not promise her power or glory, it promised her home. A home that was alive and well, waiting for her just beyond the misty island that was now visible in the distance. Tears streamed down Diana's face. "They're there," she whispered, her warrior's resolve crumbling under the weight of her grief. "They're alive. I have to go to them." She took a step toward the edge of the boat, her eyes fixed on the island of the sirens. Percy, shaking his head to clear the alluring sound, tackled her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Diana, snap out of it. It's a trick." He was strong, but she was a goddess. With a sorrowful cry, she threw him off as if he were a child. It was Annabeth who saved them. While Percy struggled to hold Diana back, she took the ship's wheel. "I can't fight her," she yelled, her own face pale with the effort of resisting the song, "but I can outthink a rock." Instead of trying to sail away from the island, she steered the boat parallel to it, riding a treacherous current that ran along the shore. It was a gamble that required a navigator's genius and a sailor's prayer. Diana reached for the railing again, ready to dive into the sea. "Let me go," she cried, her voice breaking. "They're waiting for me." In that moment of desperation, her hand brushed against the lasso at her hip.
As her fingers closed around it, its gentle warmth pulsed, a wave of pure, unassailable truth. The lasso did not block the siren's song, but it laid the truth bare alongside the lie. It showed her the image of her mother, but it also showed her the cold, silent void where her universe used to be. It showed her the image of her smiling sisters, and it showed her their final, fading screams. The beautiful lie of the sirens could not stand against the terrible, perfect honesty of Hestia's gift. With a gut-wrenching sob, Diana collapsed to the deck, the spell broken, replaced by the raw, agonizing reality of her loss. Percy and Annabeth rushed to her side, their own struggles forgotten. They didn't offer words of comfort, there were none. Instead, Percy put a hand on her shoulder, and Annabeth simply stood guard as they finally sailed past the deadly island. The alliance of outsiders had been forged in the fire of shared truth. They had faced Diana's deepest sorrow together, and they had survived. As the siren's song faded behind them, a new island appeared on the horizon, shrouded in mist and crackling with a powerful feminine energy. This time it was no illusion. It was Themyscira. The mist that shrouded the island did not part for them. It was a living, breathing barrier, thick with enchantments that tasted of ozone and ancient warnings. Percy, channeling his father's power, had to fight the currents every inch of the way, the sea itself seeming to resist their approach as if obeying a command. As they drew closer, the island revealed itself not as a gentle paradise, but as a fortress. Jagged, dark cliffs rose from the churning sea, their faces carved with watchtowers. The architecture visible on the cliff tops was beautiful, yes, gleaming white marble and gold, but it was severe, military grade. It was Sparta, not Athens. It was a place built for war, not for peace. A cold knot of dread began to form in Diana's stomach, chilling the hope that had sustained her. The Themyscira of her memory was a vibrant jewel, a place of lush forests, open-air amphitheaters, and joyous training arenas where laughter was as common as the clang of steel. This island felt silent, wary. It was a paradise holding its breath, waiting for an attack. They had barely guided the Nereid's compass into a small, hidden cove at the base of the cliffs when figures descended upon them. They did not walk down a path, they rappelled down the sheer rock face with a silent, deadly efficiency that spoke of endless drills. There were a dozen of them, clad in polished bronze armor that carried a distinctly Roman influence, plumed helmets, teruges at their waists, and rectangular shields. They held spears tipped with celestial bronze, and their faces were hard, impassive masks of suspicion. "State your purpose," the leader commanded, her voice sharp and devoid of warmth. Her eyes, cold and assessing, swept over them, lingering on Percy with undisguised hostility. "How did you find this island? No man is permitted to set foot on Themyscira." Percy raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "We come in peace. We brought someone." But Diana stepped forward, her heart aching. These were Amazons. She could see it in their proud bearing, in the strength coiled in their limbs. But there was no recognition in their eyes, no spark of sisterhood. They looked at her as they would any other outsider, a potential threat. "I am Diana," she said, her voice imbued with the royal authority she had carried her entire life. "Daughter of Queen Hippolyta, I have come home." The name Hippolyta caused a ripple of murmurs through the warriors, but it was not the reaction she expected. It was not reverence, but a mix of confusion and historical curiosity, as if she had just named a figure from a dusty scroll. The captain scoffed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Hippolyta has been dead for 3,000 years, stranger, and you are no Amazon I have ever seen. Your armor is foreign. Your accent is strange. You are an outsider, and you have brought a male to our sacred shores. You are no princess. You are an invader." The word struck Diana with the force of a physical blow. Invader? Her? An invader in her own home? She looked past the warriors at the island itself, and the differences became stark and painful. The air here was not filled with the scent of salt and flowers, but with the metallic scent of the forge and the sterile scent of polished marble. The joy was gone. This place had the soul of a barracks. Her Themyscira had been a sanctuary to protect the world from war. This one felt like a sanctuary to protect itself from the world. "This is not my home," Diana whispered, the realization of final crushing weight. The song she had followed across the void, the echo of divinity, it had led her to a place with the same name, but not the same heart. This was the Themyscira of this reality, a world where the gods were petty and cruel, and their followers had been shaped in their image, hardened, fearful, isolated. "Of course it's not your home," the captain snapped, misinterpreting her confession. "Seize them. Queen Hilla will pass judgment on this trespass." The name Hilla was the final nail in the coffin of her hope. Annabeth had been right. Chiron had been right. This world's history was not hers. As the Amazons advanced, their spears leveled. Percy drew Riptide, and Annabeth unsheathed her dagger, their bodies instinctively forming a defensive triangle around Diana. "Wait," Annabeth said, her voice sharp with authority. "Hilla knows me. I am Annabeth Chase, daughter of Athena. We fought together against the forces of Gaia." The captain paused, her eyes narrowing at Annabeth with a flicker of recognition. "The Greek. I remember you. You fought with Reyna, but that does not grant you the right to bring others here, especially not a male and a charlatan spouting ancient history." Diana held up a hand, stopping Percy and Annabeth. There would be no fighting. Not here. Not against women who should have been her sisters. The grief that had been her constant companion since her world died now settled into a cold, profound loneliness. She was utterly, completely alone. "We will go with you," Diana said, her voice weary but resolute. She let her sword fall from its scabbard, the blade sinking into the sand with a soft thud. It was a gesture of surrender, but also of defiance. She would not fight them, but she would not be cowed. "Take me to your queen. I will answer for my invasion." The Amazons, surprised by the lack of resistance, surrounded them. They bound Percy's hands with celestial bronze, a precaution that sizzled against his demigod skin. But they were hesitant to touch Diana. Her power, her sorrow, and her regal bearing created an aura that kept even these hardened warriors at a distance. As they were marched up the cliff-face path towards the silent marble city, Diana looked back at the sea. Her journey was over. She had found Themyscira, but she had not found home. Paradise was not lost. It was a place she had never been, and these were not the sisters she had lost. They were her jailers. The throne room of the Amazon Queen was an exercise in austere power. Polished white marble floors reflected the cold, efficient light filtering through high, narrow windows. There were no cushions on the stone benches, no frivolous decorations on the walls, only banners depicting ancient victories and the stark, stylized AMZN symbol that Diana now recognized as the mark of their queen's corporate empire. At the far end of the hall, on a throne carved from a single block of black obsidian, sat Queen Hilla, daughter of Bellona. She wore practical, modern combat fatigues under a bronze cuirass, her dark hair braided tightly, her face a mask of weary authority. Diana, Percy, and Annabeth stood before the throne, unarmed and surrounded by a phalanx of the Queen's royal guard. Hilla's gaze was sharp and unforgiving. She looked at Annabeth first. "Annabeth Chase," the Queen said, her voice echoing slightly in the cavernous hall. "It is a great dishonor you do me. You were an ally. You know our laws. To bring a male here is a capital offense. To bring a liar masquerading as an ancient princess is an insult." "She is not a liar," Annabeth replied, her chin held high. Hilla's gaze shifted to Percy, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. a son of Poseidon, one of the old guard. Your kind has brought nothing but ruin and heartache to our people for millennia. Give me one reason why I should not have you cast from the highest cliff." "Because I'm a friend of your sister," Percy shot back, his defiance unwavering. "Reyna wouldn't want you to kill her allies." Hilla's expression tightened at the mention of her sister, but her focus finally settled on Diana. She studied her for a long, silent moment, taking in the strange, star-spangled armor, the regal bearing that could not be faked, and the profound, world-ending sorrow in her eyes. "And you," the queen said, her voice laced with a cold skepticism, "you claim the name of Hippolyta's daughter. You claim to be a princess of a home that turned to dust before our ancestors were born. You speak of gods we know as cruel, selfish children, and you call them noble. You are either a madwoman or a spy sent to sow discord. Which is it?" Words had failed Diana on the beach, and they would fail her here. The truth of her existence was too vast, too painful to be conveyed in mere speech. It had to be felt, it had to be witnessed. With a grace that captivated the entire room, Diana uncoiled the golden lasso from her hip. It glowed with a soft, inviting warmth, a stark contrast to the cold marble of the throne room. "I will not fight you," Diana said, her voice quiet but resonant. "I will not resist your judgment. I will only offer you the truth." She held the shimmering rope out in her open palms. "This is the lasso of Hestia, forged in the fires of my world's divine hearth. It compels absolute truth. I ask that you take it, Queen Hilla. Hold it, and you will see my reality. You will feel my loss. Then you may judge me as you see fit." A nervous murmur went through the guards. To touch such an artifact, offered by a potential enemy, was an insane risk. But Hilla was a daughter of the war goddess. She had faced giants and titans. She would not show fear before this stranger. With a sharp gesture, she silenced her guards and descended the steps of her throne. She stood before Diana, her eyes narrowed, searching for any sign of a trick. She found none. With a deep breath, Hilla reached out and wrapped her hand around the glowing lasso. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. It wasn't a voice or an image, it was a deluge. Hilla was suddenly standing on the plains of Themyscira, not her own cold fortress, but a paradise of impossible beauty, filled with the sounds of laughter and the scent of unknown flowers. She felt the warmth of a mother's love, a Hippolyta so full of grace and strength it made her heart ache. She witnessed Diana training, fighting, laughing with her sisters. Then the vision turned to horror. She was in space, aboard an invisible jet, watching a wave of pure, silent nothing consume galaxies. She felt Diana's own desperate, useless struggle. She heard the final, psychic scream of 1 billion Amazon souls, as their entire reality was snuffed out like a candle flame. She felt the crushing, infinite loneliness of being the last. Hilla stumbled back, ripping her hand away from the lasso as if it were white-hot iron. She was panting, her queenly composure utterly shattered. Her face was pale, and for the first time the hardened warrior queen looked like what she was, a woman carrying the weight of a world on her shoulders. Her guards stared, shocked into silence by their leader's raw expression of emotion. Diana coiled her lasso, the soft light dimming. She looked at the shaken queen, not with triumph, but with a shared, heartbreaking empathy. "Your world taught you to survive, so you built a fortress. My world taught us to protect, so we built a bridge. We were a beacon of hope, a light to the world of men, to show them a better way. You have preserved the Amazon name, Queen Hilla. You have endured, but you hide from the world in fear of it. You have survived," she repeated, her voice rising with a passion that was both an accusation and a plea. "But have you lived?" The question hung in the cold air, more powerful than any weapon. Diana had used her lasso not to extract a confession, but to give one. She had revealed her own impossible, tragic story, and in doing so had held up a mirror to this Themyscira's soul, challenging the very foundation of its hardened, fearful isolation. The silence in the throne room was no longer hostile. It was the sound of 1,000 years of certainty beginning to crack. The echo of Diana's question, "Have you lived?" hung in the cold throne room, a judgment more profound than any the queen could deliver. Hilla stood frozen, the phantom sensation of a dead universe still clinging to her soul. The guards shifted, their spears suddenly feeling heavier, their certainty shaken. For the first time in centuries, the silence on Themyscira was not one of discipline, but of doubt. That was when the ground trembled. A low, guttural roar, filled with a rage that was both bestial and divine, rolled in from the sea, so powerful it vibrated through the marble floor. It was followed by another and another, a chorus of monstrous fury. A single piercing blast from a conch horn echoed from a watchtower, the alarm for a full-scale invasion. Instantly, the spell was broken. Hilla's face, which had been a canvas of shock and dawning realization, hardened back into the mask of a commander. The doubt was gone, replaced by the grim focus of a queen defending her home. "To the battlements!" she commanded, her voice a clarion call that cut through the fear. "Phalanx formation! Protect the city gates! Go!" The royal guard moved with terrifying efficiency, their hesitation forgotten as they fell back on centuries of training. They turned and ran from the throne room, their sandals slapping against the marble as they grabbed their shields and headed for the fight. In moments, Diana, Percy, and Annabeth were left standing alone with the queen. "It is Ares," Diana said, her voice a low, grim statement of fact. "This is his retribution for his wounded pride." "It does not matter whose it is," Hilla snapped, grabbing a plumed helmet and a wicked-looking spear from a stand near her throne. "All that matters is that it is here." She paused, her gaze falling on her 3 prisoners. She saw an enemy of her people in Percy, a complicated ally in Annabeth, and an utter enigma in Diana. "Stay here," she commanded. "Do not interfere." She turned to lead her people in a desperate defense. "That is not an option," Diana stated, her voice stopping the queen in her tracks. "I will not stand by while Amazons are slaughtered by the tantrum of a petty god." She looked at the 2 guards who remained, their faces pale but resolute. "Give me my sword." The guards looked to their queen, who hesitated for a fraction of a second. It was all Diana needed. She moved, a blur of motion that was too fast to follow. She didn't attack the guards, she flowed past them, her hands striking the pressure points on their wrists with perfect, disabling precision. Their spears clattered to the floor, their hands tingling and useless. Before they could even register what had happened, Diana had retrieved her sword from where it had been confiscated, its divine balance settling in her hand like a long-lost part of herself. "Annabeth, Percy," Diana said, her voice now ringing with the authority of a battlefield commander. "Are you with me?" "Always," Percy said, uncapping Riptide. Annabeth spun her dagger, her gray eyes already scanning the architecture of the throne room, calculating angles and trajectories. Hilla stared, stunned, as her prisoners armed themselves. "This is my island, my fight." "No," Diana said, turning to face the queen, her eyes blazing with a fire that seemed to eclipse the coldness of the hall. "You are defending a fortress. I am going to defend its people. There is a difference." She didn't wait for a reply. She sprinted from the throne room, Percy and Annabeth at her heels. They reached the main city gates just as the first wave of monsters crashed against the Amazon shield wall. They were colossal hounds, the size of pickup trucks, with fur like iron bristles and eyes that burned with the same fire Diana had seen in Ares's. They breathed not fire, but jets of superheated, noxious gas that could melt bronze. The Amazons were holding, their discipline absolute as they braced their shields and thrust with their spears, but they were being pushed back. For every hound they brought down, 2 more seemed to clamber over the cliffs. Diana did not join the shield wall. She surveyed the battle for a split second, her strategic mind assessing the flow of the conflict. The Amazons were fighting a defensive battle of attrition, a battle they would eventually lose. "We have to break their momentum," she yelled to Percy and Annabeth. "Target the alphas." With a warrior's cry that was both beautiful and terrifying, she leapt over the shield wall, landing in the no-man's land between the phalanx and the pack. The hounds, momentarily confused by this new target, turned their burning eyes on her. One lunged, its massive jaws shutting close with enough force to bite a chariot in half. Diana slammed her bracelets together. The Aegis effect flared, a blinding wave of golden light and concussive force that sent the hound flying backward into two of its brethren. She didn't pause. She flowed through the battle like water, her sword a silver blur. She was not just a brawler, she was a master. She disabled rather than kill where she could, her blade severing tendons and muscles with surgical precision, toppling the beasts without wasting energy on kill shots. Percy, seeing his opening, ran to a large ornamental fountain in the city plaza. Placing his hands in the water, he felt the familiar tug in his gut. With a roar, he thrust his arms forward, and the entire contents of the fountain erupted, forming a massive, swirling water whip. He lashed it out, dousing the fiery breath of one hound and sending it crashing into a wall disoriented. Annabeth, using her dagger and the chaos as cover, got behind a beast that was trying to flank the Amazon line and drove her blade into the weak spot behind its knee, crippling it. Hilla, fighting at the front line with her sisters, watched in stunned disbelief. These outsiders, this impossible princess, were not just fighting, they were turning the tide. Diana fought with a grace and power the likes of which she had never seen. She fought not just to win, but to protect, her body constantly moving to intercept attacks aimed at the Amazon line. She was a living shield for them all. The largest hound, a true behemoth with scars from 1,000 battles, saw Diana as the primary threat. It ignored the shield wall and charged her, its massive jaws snapping shut with enough force to bite a chariot in half. Diana slammed her bracelets together. The Aegis effect flared, a blinding wave of golden light and concussive force that sent the hound flying backward into two of its brethren. She didn't pause. She flowed through the battle like water, her sword a silver blur. She was not just a brawler, she was a master. She disabled rather than kill where she could, her blade severing tendons and muscles with surgical precision, toppling the beasts without wasting energy on kill shots. Percy, seeing his opening, ran to a large ornamental fountain in the city plaza. Placing his hands in the water, he felt the familiar tug in his gut. With a roar, he thrust his arms forward, and the entire contents of the fountain erupted, forming a massive, swirling water whip. He lashed it out, dousing the fiery breath of one hound and sending it crashing into a wall disoriented. Annabeth, using her dagger and the chaos as cover, got behind a beast that was trying to flank the Amazon line and drove her blade into the weak spot behind its knee, crippling it. Hilla, fighting at the front line with her sisters, watched in stunned disbelief. These outsiders, this impossible princess, were not just fighting, they were turning the tide. Diana fought with a grace and power the likes of which she had never seen. She fought not just to win, but to protect, her body constantly moving to intercept attacks aimed at the Amazon line. She was a living shield for them all. The largest hound, a true behemoth with scars from 1,000 battles, saw Diana as the primary threat. It ignored the shield wall and charged her, its massive jaws snapping shut with enough force to bite a chariot in half. Diana slammed her bracelets together. The Aegis effect flared, a blinding wave of golden light and concussive force that sent the hound flying backward into two of its brethren. She didn't pause. She flowed through the battle like water, her sword a silver blur. She was not just a brawler, she was a master. She disabled rather than kill where she could, her blade severing tendons and muscles with surgical precision, toppling the beasts without wasting energy on kill shots. Percy, seeing his opening, ran to a large ornamental fountain in the city plaza. Placing his hands in the water, he felt the familiar tug in his gut. With a roar, he thrust his arms forward, and the entire contents of the fountain erupted, forming a massive, swirling water whip. He lashed it out, dousing the fiery breath of one hound and sending it crashing into a wall disoriented. Annabeth, using her dagger and the chaos as cover, got behind a beast that was trying to flank the Amazon line and drove her blade into the weak spot behind its knee, crippling it. Hilla, fighting at the front line with her sisters, watched in stunned disbelief. These outsiders, this impossible princess, were not just fighting, they were turning the tide. Diana fought with a grace and power the likes of which she had never seen. She fought.
In the aftermath, the city was a strange mix of chaos and reverence. Amazons moved with practiced efficiency, tending to the wounded and clearing the wreckage, but their movements were silent, their eyes continually drawn to the woman in the star-spangled armor. Diana, for her part, did not stand apart. She moved among them, helping to lift a fallen marble column off a trapped warrior, her touch gentle, her voice a low, soothing comfort to the injured. She was not a queen demanding fealty or a general inspecting her troops. She was a sister, helping in the aftermath of a battle she had won for them. Queen Hilla approached, her helmet off, her face streaked with grime and monster ichor. She stopped before Diana, and for a long moment the two leaders simply looked at each other, the fortress and the bridge, the survivor and the savior. "I owe you my life," Hilla said, the words stiff, as if she were unaccustomed to admitting debt. "My city, my people, we owe you our lives." She took a deep breath, the admission costing her warrior's pride dearly. "I was wrong. You are no invader. You are a true Amazon." A sad smile touched Diana's lips. "We are all true Amazons, Hilla. We were just taught different lessons by different worlds." She looked around at the strong, disciplined warriors and then at the high walls that surrounded them. "Your world taught you to build a fortress to survive. Mine taught me to build a bridge to protect. Perhaps," she added, her gaze meeting the queen's, "we both have something to learn." The unspoken offer hung between them. Stay. Stay and teach us. Stay and lead us. But they both knew it was impossible. Diana's spirit was too vast for this beautiful gilded cage. Her purpose was not to rule from a throne, but to serve in the trenches of the world. "This is not my home," Diana said softly, the final acceptance of the truth, a quiet release rather than a painful blow. "My Themyscira is gone. It is a memory, but its ideals, they are a mission, and that mission cannot be fulfilled behind walls, no matter how safe they are." Hilla nodded, a flicker of understanding and perhaps envy in her eyes. "Then what will you do?" "I will do what I was born to do," Diana replied. "I will be a champion for those who have none. I will stand for peace, and when peace is not possible, I will stand against those who revel in war." Her eyes seemed to look past Hilla, toward the distant, unseen peak of Olympus. "This world is full of powerful children who need to be reminded what true strength is." A new treaty was forged that day, not on a scroll, but in a shared look of respect. Diana was declared Amazon ex patria, an Amazon outside the homeland. She was granted the eternal friendship and sanctuary of Themyscira, a place to rest and heal should she ever need it. Percy and Annabeth stood by, watching the exchange. Their quest was over. They had brought the impossible woman to the impossible island, and in doing so had changed the course of history for both.
"So," Percy said as they set sail, the island receding into its protective mist once more. Diana stood at the prow, the new shield on her arm, her gaze fixed on the horizon of her new, unfamiliar world. "Now," she said, her voice filled with a quiet, unshakable purpose, "I find my place. I am a warrior without a war, a princess without a kingdom, a daughter without a mother. I stand in the land between my lost home and this new one, a no man's land." She turned her face to the wind, the sea spray cool on her skin. She had followed a ghost across the void, a desperate search for a home that no longer existed. But in the wreckage of that hope, she had found something else, a purpose. Her journey to Themyscira was over, but her journey in this world had just begun. She was no longer Diana, Princess of Themyscira. She was something new, something necessary. She was Diana, the champion of a world that was not hers, and a force that the gods of Olympus had yet to truly reckon with. Word count 1089. Conclusion. Diana's acceptance of her new reality marked not an end, but a profound beginning. She would become a legend whispered among the demigods of Camp Half-Blood, the strange, powerful woman who humbled Ares and befriended the Amazons. She established herself as an independent force for justice, a guardian who operated outside the purview of the gods and the protocols of the camps. Her presence fundamentally altered the balance of power, a new piece on the cosmic chessboard that neither Zeus nor Cronus's scattered forces had anticipated. She was a figure of hope for the demigods, proof that one could possess the power of a god, but wield it with the heart of humanity. Though the ache for her lost world would never truly fade, it became the fuel for her mission, to ensure that this world, in all its flawed, chaotic, and beautiful glory, would never suffer the same silent fate. Her legend, born from the ashes of one universe, was just beginning to be written in the annals of another.